stories of trauma related to sexual, physical, and emotional abuse. If you or someone you know is struggling or in crisis, help is available. Call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org. Welcome to the It's Your Story to Tell podcast. I'm your host today, Megan Babcock, and I am so excited to be here with Thea. We got connected through a business group, and as we were talking, found out we both, one, have gone through trauma, but two, we like to help others as they're navigating their traumas. So, Thea, thank you for joining me, for your willingness to share. I would love if you would share a little bit about how you use your skills and talents, along with all of the knowledge that you have of trauma and overcoming things, to help others in their home and helping them to get control of the environment, which we all know sometimes when you're going through really hard things can
The
kind of
last thing
almost
we
be
worry about.
yes, and it becomes a reflection almost sometimes of like the chaos on the inside, right?
Absolutely.
So
Well, thank you. I have an organizing business where I work very efficiently, very consistently with people who have gone through trauma, who are currently dealing with healing from trauma, who are on the other end of pushing through trauma, and they are ready to let go of all of the things that trauma creates in our physical life that we're not entirely aware of, that also kind of becomes this backside like guilt and shame piece that also really feeds into what we're dealing with. And that's another thing we have to heal from. And um, I focus on dealing a lot with people who have hoarding disorder. I work a lot with people who have lost family members, lost their children, things along those lines, people in domestic violence situations. Absolutely love what I do, and helping people being able to regain their space as they're regaining their mental clarity, because they are so one in each other that we sometimes really forget how our physical space is really affecting us mentally and emotionally. So super excited to be here.
I know for me, when you're in a situation and you're so overwhelmed, but you know that you need help, like, but you're embarrassed to like even have someone maybe come in
Oh yeah.
and help you, that Thea's your girl. Like, you don't have to
I love the
feel
dirty ones. If you think your home is gross, please call me. I am the person you want, because like there's no shame to be had here, none. Which is one of the reasons I'm really excited to be here, because I work so much with trauma and I get so close with my clients, but other people don't necessarily know the trauma that I've been through, which allows me to work so well with my existing clients, because I have a lot of
right.
different forms of trauma I've gone through. So.
Well, that's the power of story, right? Is that when we have a story and we can then empathize, totally different than somebody who's never had those experiences. So, why don't you just start out by taking us a little bit like through your story? I know it's like, woo, all the way back to
It's
your
a
childhood,
journey.
like,
It's a
but
journey. But it hasn't all been a bad one, but it's definitely been a journey. I grew up in Hood River, super small town, right? Well, small towns have their problems that people don't talk about a whole lot. When growing up, I had a really big family, and we were all super close, thought we were. And then as I got older, I experienced family abuse, which was never something that was talked about to me as I was younger. Like a lot of like relationship abuse, like that was drilled into me when I was younger. Like that was my mom's goal. My girls are not going to be abused by man, right? And so that being just super drilled into me, I didn't think about family. And so when I was 14, my grandfather tried to have sex with me. And that was an interesting situation, because I was also then disowned by my family on the East Coast. a huge trauma for me, but because it was something that was never talked about, no one told me about family abuse. No one told me that, someone I'm related to could want to do that and how awful.
Mm.
Um, and so because of that, every red flag that came up, because there were tons in like a week span, there was like 20 red flags with this person. And I ignored them all because it was family. It was
Mm.
my grandfather. You don't account for that when you're 14.
Right.
That's not. And
Yeah.
we did family trips over there. So I'm an Oregon girl and my family's in Virginia. And so it's a very different way of life. And so just I ignored things. And I was 14. I was a teenager. My grandfather was talking to me about sex. That's kind of weird, but like interesting. Like I get to kind of ask some questions I don't get to ask other people. So I ignored everything.
Mm.
And then the situation happened. And he tried. Luckily, my mother taught me better and was like, no, 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 no. So, and then, after that, we moved to Arizona. I was in Arizona for 10 years. But when I got the chance to get out, I got out. I need the green, my mental clarity. I need nature. I need hiking. I need the trees. I need the water. I need to not be in the desert. Let me tell you, I'm not meant to be there. Power to you if you are, but I'm not. And so, my husband and I moved here. We actually, when we came up, we left our kids for 3 months, and 4 months, and you'd be a little realistic. We left them for about 4 months in Arizona, which was at the time easy because we were working towards this way better life that we knew was happening. But as the months went on, it was the hardest thing I've ever done ever. And so when they got here, it was just family, and we were so close and interactive with each other, and we were just we were such a unit together. And Oregon is an expensive place to live. It
Mm.
is. And when you have kids super young and you're driven without purpose at a young age, you're broke. You are broke. You are financially strapped. You are struggling. And when that happens, it affects everything, absolutely everything.
Mm.
And so a part of that was really being affected was my marriage. And we were so stressed all the time and arguing about nothing, mind you, like literally, in this time period as we're shifting, right? Because we're shifting into this like serious love of Oregon and where we're living, but also at the same time, we're shifting to this weird phase of our marriage where we're having a really hard time communicating. We're having a hard time with finances. Like the kids are doing great. They're at least very happy. My son was struggling in school and other ways, but like for the most part, everyone was just very happy and joyful, and that I thought was a win. Um, and I kind of lost sight of really taking care of the financial portion of our life, right? Because our family was happy, and that's all that matters. It's
Mm.
not. And so as I lost sight of finances, um, so I had a really good friend come into my life, and we became so incredibly close, and not just me and him, but me and his wife. That they came to Thanksgiving 2 years in a row. They came to Christmases, and we bought them gifts. They bought our children gifts. Like we were close. They were integrated in our life at this point. And now we're starting to really struggle financially. And when we start really struggling financially, my husband, who is going to do what he has to do to take care of his family, he went to Portland and found a job. We were living in the Dalles at the time, by the way. But so he went to Portland and was sleeping in our van to
Mm.
work and to make some kind of income because there's no work in the Dalles. And so as that was happening, our relationship was deteriorating more because we're not even together anymore. So now I'm having to explain to the kids, well, dad's gone all the time. And then we're still financially struggling. And then I'm only with the kids and he's gone for a week at a time. And super stressful, like just insanely horrible. And
Mm.
for 3 months, my friend E and his wife were very persistent and consistent about we have our own house. You and the kids can come and stay with us and get off of the financial burden piece of it and live with us for free. Like you guys get food stamps, you can pay for your own food. At the time, like I said, we were super broke. So, you can pay for your own food. That's great. But live with us while you get on your feet. And for months I declined. And my husband was 100% like, no, that's not happening. And in January of that year, I think it was like 2016, 2017, 2016. There we go. And I couldn't do it anymore. I'm like, we're going to get an eviction notice at some point where I'm not going to be able to sweet talk my way out of this. And I've never had an eviction on my record. And if we get an eviction on our record, we're never again finding somewhere to live, right? So you're trying to keep all these pieces for the future in place. And I broke. I'm like, okay. And then it had been till June, right? So for a few months, my friend E had been telling me how horribly miserable he is in his marriage. And, that it was supposed to be this short-term thing. So it could help her move out of her parents' house, who are really controlling in different ways. And which turned out not to be entirely true, by the way. Just all of these things. Supportive friend. If you're not happy, and I knew that his wife was not happy at this time either. I'm like, if you guys aren't happy, either talk or split. I'm divorced as well at this, like I'm married, but I'm divorced. So I understand. And so the 1st of June, they had this conversation. But I helped her pack her stuff, and she moved out July 1st. And when I told because my husband was still working in Portland this whole time. In June, I told him, like, Jamie's moving out. She's leaving E, and she's gone. He's like, well, you're not living there with him without me there. And that is where things somehow shifted. And once it was that she was leaving, all of our dynamics changed. And like within the 7-month period of me first moving in and now, he goes to, every time I go to the grocery store, he's with me. Every library trip, every school function, he had already fully integrated himself into every activity I was doing. If I was doing yard work around the house, he was right next to me doing yard work. If I was, if I was driving to Portland for no reason, he was with me. Wouldn't have necessarily invited him, but he's right there next to me. He's coming with me. And it's just like a full integration. And it's like having a new girlfriend, right? We all know how that goes when you get a new friend or you get a new boyfriend, you kind of become infatuated and like you're just with them all the time. And that's kind of how this was. We were with together all the time, but my husband and I were still struggling emotionally because our communication wasn't great, because we were struggling in everything else for so. And, I ignored every red flag that could have came my way. I remember a lot of them. I ignored them all. Because again, it's not a spouse. It's not a boyfriend who could be controlling me or abusive. It's somebody, it's a person in your life, like a family member, that shouldn't be abusing you this way, shouldn't be having this kind of effect on you and control on you. And it's something that, because it wasn't spoke to me, as silly as that is, sometimes we just have to be told stuff. Like my clients, you'd be shocked how often when it comes to holding on to stuff, they just need permission to let it go. Because it's guilt that's making them keep the thing. It's the exact same thing with us. We keep the guilt inside of us, and we just need the permission to let it go. And the great thing is I get to act as that permission. Unfortunately, when it's emotional stuff, you're the only one. Sorry, guys. But it's real.
True.
And, that was a huge reason why it was able to escalate to the point that it was, or getting to. And, and this went on for about 3 years in its entirety. About a year and a half in is when, it was, I was I was fully aware that it was a horrifically toxic situation. But at this point, I lived in a house with my children where all of our money was able to go to our kids. And that had never been the case before. Our kids were in gymnastics, our kids were doing basketball and soccer and doing all the extracurricular activities because I wasn't working, and I was able to take them to all of the things. Like there were benefits for my
Mm.
family for us staying here. And so I stayed there and went the easier route. And that means ignoring the red flags. That means you have somebody who's a best friend and they in rooms where no one else is around and everybody's gone, they're like, why were you sitting so close to your husband on the couch? Like, I don't understand. Why can't you and I used to sit super close? Why is that not a thing? And it's like, I'm confused. And it just escalated to the point where I wouldn't sit next to my husband on the couch because why put up with the drama, right? Of
Mm.
doing that. It's something simple that I don't have to do. And my family still gets to reap the benefits of these things, right? And that's how it was
Right.
justified in my brain. And that's how I continue to justify it. And unfortunately, that justification led to sexual abuse and rape
Mm.
and um, financial control and horrible things that I never thought I would experience again because I had gone through trauma when I was younger. I went through abuse. And when you go through it young, for some reason, we get this mental clarity, right? Of, I got this. I know you can't do this to me again. Nobody can. And because there's so many different forms of toxicity and where it comes from, there's so many ways to ignore the red flags. And like to this day, I've never been emotionally or physically abused by my spouse ever from the time I was younger, but I've experienced it in so many other forms since then that I was fully unprepared for. And
Mm.
it's crazy the effect that it's had. And and like my husband and I have been like actively working, so like we were trying, but he knew as well as I did that we were limited on how hard we could try because of the drama, because it was no longer just hidden behind closed doors. You could physically see when my husband and I would be close together how angry he was, how agitated he would
Mm.
get, the fact that he would storm off and like leave. And it was starting to confuse my children, it was starting to confuse everybody. I knew it was happening, but because I hadn't told anybody, it was, I felt like a beaten dog. And I just
Mm.
literally, even after like years of my husband and I struggling and having a hard time, I remember just crawling into him when I got back and needing him. And like I broke and I told him everything.
Mm.
And so, like, very quickly, he learned everything that was happening. And he had no idea that it was to the extent that it was. And, I now hug my children again, which is great. I stopped doing
Mm.
that and didn't know until he left because when I came back, I wanted to just hug everyone. And I hugged my kids and was like, "Oh my God, I haven't hugged you guys in a year." Like,
Wow.
that's a horrible realization to have. Like, and I'm not one who's like, "Oh, my babies," but like, to know that I hadn't done that for so long, that was horrible. And then there's a whole nother level of like shame and anger and all the things. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Mhm.
It does a lot.
So many layers. So
Oh
many.
yeah.
I just thank you for sharing. I mean, that's a lot, right? Whew,
It was a
I
very long
just,
time. It was a very, very
yeah.
long time. Or at least it felt like a very long time. A lot of people have gone through a lot worse for a longer period of time. And like
Well, I want to say to you, trauma's trauma.
Oh, God, yeah. Perspective is
And
everything.
what you went through was awful. And you don't have to compare, like, well, mine wasn't as bad as someone else's. Like, every bit of trauma, and yours is a lot. I mean, starting from
It's different.
a young age, it's different, but it impacts you. And I think that's what's so important, because I went through a a long period of time where I dismissed, well, mine's not as bad. Like, it's not as bad as anybody else's.
Oh,
I need to just pull up my bootstraps, put my big girl panties on, and get
that's
on
right.
with life.
That's right.
That's damaging,
Oh,
you know?
it's horrifically damaging. I remember I mean the whole reason, honestly, why, like, don't get me wrong, my husband would have believed me, but like he's a 90s male, so like where we used to handle things, he's like, if I would have known this would have been over and done with and we would have been out. I'm like, yeah, I know, but you and I wouldn't have made it through at the end. Like, we were not
And
okay.
there were
So like
reasons why you were there for your kids, right? I
I
mean,
I
that's the thing, is
that
like,
was my
we,
justification for sure. And
right.
then you know, I real as soon as I realized that that was that manipulating key that was being used, because the reason I didn't tell anybody was because he was, I mean, everybody loves him, everybody gets along with him, and seriously, big baby, how could you possibly think he could hurt you? And that is what kept me there. We get stuck in a trauma. You have clients who, they take care of their dying parents for years. They can't step back in that room to save their life. And not only can they not step foot in there, they don't want the option. So what happens? Anything and everything that can be thrown in that room gets thrown in it, and then you can't even open the door. Are you a hoarder? Not at all. But you don't ever want to get and go back in that room. That's trauma. That's a response.
Mm,
That's something that our
yeah.
brain does to keep us from dealing with the trauma that happened. And it's okay, because we work through the stuff, and sometimes it's more releasing than people think to be able to deal with the stuff that
Mhm.
has cluttered up the trauma.
Hmm.
It's hard to work through trauma when your trauma is so cluttered up with other things you stack in front of it, so you don't have to deal with it, because now you have to get through that stuff first and then deal with the trauma. So it
Right.
creates layers upon layers upon layers, and it's so
Well, it's a coping mechanism,
re-traumatizing.
right? I mean, some people drink, some people use drugs, there's sex, there's codependency, there's perfectionism, there's
Oh,
hoarding, like, right? I mean,
there's
it's
so many.
all,
There's extreme minimalism. Oh,
it's
that's
all in a matter
heartbreaking.
of, I don't want to deal with it, and
Yeah,
so I do something different. And
yeah,
I think that's what I want people to understand, is that when you have a traumatic event that happens, when you don't deal with it, you are actually going to have to, you're going to deal with something. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm not going to deal with the trauma and life goes and I can be my best self. No, because if you don't deal with the trauma, you're taking on another behavior to push that away, and likely it's one that damages you.
you know. This year's been a real mental push of healing and things. Never in a million years would have thought that trauma and abuse can happen like that in a friendship. It was never a thought
Mm.
ever in my life would I thought that that would have been a thing I experienced.
Well, I'm so glad you're sharing it and bringing it
Yes.
to light, because that's what I think is so powerful about sharing our stories and sharing how things don't look the same. Because
Yes.
you're right, we can think, oh, this isn't going to happen in this scenario, or we don't talk about it in the family scenario,
Yeah.
or and I think it's interesting, right, that you were able to recognize that you found abuse in a very similar, unexpected way. It was family and a friendship. And in both of those times, maybe you had your guard down, right?
Oh,
Maybe
100%.
because you weren't thinking about it. And so you
100%.
can
Yeah.
see that trauma oftentimes continues to come back similar, but yet different, right?
We don't think that way.
Right, right. Well, I am really grateful for you for opening up, letting us in, walking us through. And so tell us a little bit more about where people can find you if they feel like they're ready to maybe they need to get their environment in a place so that they can even do the emotional work,
Yeah.
or maybe they're doing the emotional work and they're ready
They need to
to,
see a reflection. Yeah.
yeah. How can they reach you?
So before I go into that, so you thanked me. I really want to thank you because when you and I met in person and we talked about doing this podcast and we talked about trauma and some of my experience, the thing that I absolutely loved is that you are making it okay to talk in public about trauma. You make it okay to cry in public about shit you've gone through or shit you're going through. And like that is so powerful. So like I know you went through hell and I'm so sorry, but I am so happy for what you are doing now and the awareness that you're bringing. So like bottom of my heart, all of the things like thank you so much. So for me, tears gone. I know. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I was, but to look at it now and say it's fine. It was worth it. 100%, totally worth it. I have different empathy for my clients in so many different ways because healing from that, I have peeled back a million different layers of other things and other traumas that I'm going through or have gone through, and they're connecting all the dots and doing all the things. And so because of that, I get to be so much closer with my clients. What I do is a huge emotional roller coaster. It's crazy. But God, if I can help people deal with some of the things or just make some transitions in their life easier, that's honestly all I'm here to do. So if people want to reach me, kind of go back into that. I know we're running out of time. I'm sorry. I can talk all day. So, anyone who knows me, we can talk. So anyone who wants to reach me. So we're on LinkedIn. It's new, it's growing, so feel free to follow us on there. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Thea's Organizing. We specialize in hoarding disorder. We specialize in extreme clutter. We specialize in trauma, garage organization, and pack outs for when you're moving. So if you are moving or you're selling your home, give us a call because, there's a lot of things we can do to help you. Even if we don't work together, I can give you a lot of tips and tricks to help make that transition easier so your stress is just down, because all I want to do is help. I don't care if we work together. We don't have to do that. If you have questions, call me. That's all I want to do is help.
And you service
all of
what
everywhere
area?
So I service
all of everywhere. So
all of everywhere.
Texas?
So,
No.
yes. So
Really?
as of February of 2024, I will be a CPO, which is a certified professional organizer, which means I will be allowed to work in any major city in the United States. Currently, we service all of Oregon, except for the Dells. Sorry, guys. I have resources. It's okay. So all of Oregon except for, and then we do all of Washington, California, Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, Montana, and then as soon as I'm a licensed CPA, I will go wherever you want me to go. So, and because I love travel, I am the cheapest person to take anywhere. So like if you need work, and you like us working together, let's do it. Absolutely. Let's go.
Wow.
I service
that.
everywhere.
I did not know that they could get you in so many different locations. So we will link to your information so you guys don't have to remember, but in the show notes, you can find it. You guys, I hope that you have enjoyed this really just casual conversation and hearing how someone's navigated so many different things in their life, how Thea is using it to help others. And if you find this podcast to be helpful, I hope that you will tune in. We offer a podcast every Friday with a different story, so that there's going to be somebody that you identify with. And there are already so many different stories. So you probably have a friend who needs to be listening.
Yeah.
So share with your friends. Make sure you're subscribing. And we're just so thankful to have you as part of our community, because it takes all of us coming together and accepting what trauma looks like and having
Oh,
these hard conversations if we want to make this to where there's just not stigmas around it. So
oh, absolutely.
join us in the mission, right? And
Well, yes.
we're going to be better together if we do.